To start off with, could you tell us about your NGO, Project Sea Change, and what your mission and what your purpose is?
To talk a little bit about Project Sea Change and what we do. I set up Project Sea Change 10 years ago. As Deena mentioned, I used to be the editorial director of a very well-known publication which essentially promotes luxury lifestyle. What they do is, it has a certain merit. As a journalist, I was seeing during my travels what was going on behind the scenes. So, I was very lucky to have visited the red carpet events, but then also travel to the outskirts of civilization, or those areas between wildlife and civilization. I saw what was going on behind the scenes, and I was thinking to myself, well, this can't be right, this is not sustainable. And I guess when I left, Project Sea Change was my way of trying to pay back what I had taken from the world. Now, Project Sea Change, the reason why I call it Sea is because we're at the nexus between trying to change consumerism and capitalism by elevating our consciousness. Essentially, if you look at all the problems that we're now facing in the environment, all the problems are caused by us being too greedy. We are voracious consumers. It's built in, hardwired into our nature. So we need to change our consumption habits in order to bring about a more conscientious form of capitalism. That's really what Project Sea Change is aimed at doing. And we do that with the help of celebrities sometimes, because celebrities can fast track context change or behavioral change. And recently we just finished our Kilimanjaro climb, which we'll talk about in a sec.
Yes, we are going to talk about Kilimanjaro. So your NGO recently went to Kilimanjaro for a celebrity charity climb where you raised awareness about the illegal wildlife trade. Sean, if you could just tell us a little bit about the purpose of the climb, how it was, any challenges that you encountered along the way.
So I take people who are interested in environment or people who want to be change makers, I take them to places like Kilimanjaro or the Borneo rainforest or Solomon Islands to go diving or to see the polar bears, because I believe that yes, travel could be argued that it's not sustainable, it's not environmental, but the kind of travel where you're going and you're learning and you're coming back with new perspectives. Now, charities do a great amount of amazing work, but with all the charitable work and all the charities out there, we're still at the stage where 40% of the world's wildlife has been wiped out in the last 40 years. We're still at the stage where half of all coral reefs have disappeared, and if we don't do anything, coral reefs will disappear by the end of the century. So despite all the great work that charities are doing, and not enough is being done. And I believe that really the only way we can have wholesale change quick enough is for business to change. Business has to kick into gear and see that it's in their interests to be more sustainable for a better future, more equitable future. So going back to Kilimanjaro, how does this fit in? Well, the genocide of animals is largely for an Asian demand. You can't get rid of the trade if the demand still exists. There will always be someone on the ground in Africa willing to kill an elephant for a few hundred US as long as there is a demand for it here in Asia. So why do we go to Kilimanjaro, which is a long way away from Hong Kong? Well, we want to show people that there is a connection between what's going on in Africa and here. We raise money for the charities that we're partnered with, and then they come back with a new perspective on how fragile these ecosystems are so that they do the good work back here. Now, Kilimanjaro, I've done it twice now. The first time was 9 years ago, and we had an amazing journey. It was great, which is why I said let's do it again. But this time it rained every day on the mountain. And this is meant to be the dry season. Now, some of you may have read about Antarctica. The temperatures reached 20 degrees above centigrade in the last few weeks. And that's apocalyptic. This is Antarctica. This is not meant to be happening. So how did this affect us in Kilimanjaro? Well, the eastern seaboard of Africa has been experiencing torrential rain from last November. And you're South African, you probably heard about all this. And it's playing havoc with the weather ecosystem. So Ironically, we went to Kilimanjaro to raise awareness about climate change, and we basically got dumped on for 8 days. And all the predictable weather systems that we've evolved within are now changing rapidly, playing havoc with the weather systems, but also for the animals. Let's not forget the animals.
Yes, I'm not sure if anyone saw recently, but 2 of the last 3 white giraffes were poached in Kenya, leaving 1 lone bull. So it could be the end of the species forever. And also just adding on to the change in the climate systems, I'm sure we've all heard about the locust swarms in East Africa. That's also been caused by this extremely warm, unusually warm Indian Ocean. So Sean, touching on the biodiversity loss that you were talking about before, recently the consumption of wildlife was permanently banned in China, much to, I think, most people's delight. But it's an industry that's worth $73 billion and employs over 1 million people. So it's clearly an industry, 14 million people. So it's clearly an industry that people are still supporting. Why do you think that this is still the case?
As you mentioned, it's a hugely profitable business. I think the coronavirus has brought into focus this trade and consumption of wild animals. And I mean, we should have learned the lesson after SARS. The SARS was from a civet cat, same problem. We were eating wild animals, which shouldn't have been in our possession. Now, I'm sure some of you may have heard about the pangolin before. Has anyone heard of a pangolin? Who hasn't seen a pangolin? Just you? Yeah. Okay, well, a pangolin is a really bizarre creature. It's a bipedal animal that looks like a reptile with scales on its back. It walks around kind of like this. No joke. I'm a pangolin. At least someone laughed. My efforts were repaid. Now, the pangolin is the most illegally traded mammal on the planet. It's used widely in Chinese medicine because of its supposedly good medicinal qualities for things like rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. There's no scientific basis for this. How do we get rid of this belief, these false beliefs? Same thing with rhino horn. Why do people in Vietnam still think that rhino horn cures cancer? Well, it's because there was false claims by certain high-profile people in the government that rhino horn cured their cancer. Getting rid of false beliefs is one of the hardest things to do from a conservation point of view. Behavioral change is really one of the most difficult things. Who here has tried to give up chocolate before and failed? Who's a smoker here? Have you tried giving up smoking? And you failed, right? Sorry, I can help you with that. How do you get them to stop having that mental process? And it takes a lot of work. It takes a huge amount of celebrity and government endorsements or messaging to try and change a belief system.
For those in the audience that aren't aware, Sean spearheaded a protest calling for the banning of ivory trade in Hong Kong in 2016.
Obviously the main reason for us walking today is to call on the Hong Kong government to ban the domestic ivory trade.
30,000 elephants getting killed every year, and you're trading ivory. Do you not feel ashamed? Look at what a dead elephant looks like. No? People are dying.
People are dying, elephants are dying, animals are dying.
Do you think that ivory is really worth any value? They know it's ivory!
And Sean, have you seen any progress since then? I understand at the time that the government promised to ban the trade within 5 years. Have you seen any progress with this?
Absolutely. Well, the government has banned it legally now. Since our efforts and since the lobbying, it wasn't just us, it was everyone who was doing it involved, lots of charities. The government has banned the trade. It's going to go into effect in 2021, bar some legal difficulties. The traders are calling for compensation because they're saying, well, we're being kicked out of our business. You need to compensate us. And I think the government hasn't quite figured this out. What I can say to that is that they've known that this has been a bad business for decades. It's time for them to have woken up to this, and I don't think that's an excuse. There is still going to be the illegal trade going on, trickling through. The killing is still going on in Africa. Now, a good statistic, because we want a bit of cheer, right? Everything is so depressing. There is progress. They say that shark fin trade has gone down by half since Yao Ming got involved in China. And now 90% of Chinese would willingly back a ban on the shark fin. Okay. So there is progress. Can we now translate that into other things? But yeah, it shows you there is change, there is progress, but everyone needs to get on board, and it takes a long, long time.
Can you tell us about a moment or experience during your travels relating to climate change or wildlife extinction that you found most shocking?
You know, there's many, but I think when I was in South Africa for a wedding, a rhino had been shot outside the safari area. We went to go visit it, and the female rhino had been blown apart with 3 bullets, 40 caliber rifle, and her stomach was basically open with the young fetus, 14-month-old fetus of the baby rhino hanging out. And it was just one of the most horrific things I've ever seen or experienced. I've seen elephants with their noses or trunks cut off. I've seen forests which have been decimated, for virgin rainforests in Borneo being cut down and burnt. But when you look at us from the holistic point of view as a species living within an ecosystem, there's nothing smart about it. And we have what I call the insanity gene, or it has been called the insanity gene, because we just don't see our connection within nature. We see ourselves as something separate and distinct from nature, which is why we've been so successful in overcoming it.
From your experience, what converts people to the cause most effectively? Which narrative or imagery?
It has to be a constant stream of activities. It has to be what we call omnichannel. So when you look at the work that we've done TV shows, we've done photo exhibitions, we've done magazine articles, we've done protests and marches on the street. I shouldn't say protests, marches. We've done street art festivals. We've done gala dinners. And you have to do kind of like everything these days to get people to really care. At the end of the day, again, it sounds a bit trite, but education is the key. The next generation, I feel the young kids now are far more plugged into this, because also they have access to the information. I mean, when I was, God forbid, when I was a teenager, a young lad, I didn't have the information that we now have at our disposal or at our fingertips. So it's great that the young generation do have that. They have social media as tools to then, create the next Greta. I mean, she's amazing.
I'm glad you touched on Greta Thunberg. Hong Kong's Greta Thunberg is with us in the audience. Lance Lau.
Wow.
The future of Hong Kong is in very good hands. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, sorry I have to cut you short, Sean. But with that comes the end of the event. We thank Sean so much for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it. And we have a little something for you.
Oh. Tune into the next episode and please subscribe below.